Yorùbá ẹ jí gìrì.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká gba òmìnira tiwa.
Ọmọ Yorùbá ẹ jí gìrì.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká gba òmìnira tiwa. Òmìnira ni Yorùbá fẹ́ o nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Òmìnira ni Yorùbá fẹ́ o nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Ọmọ aláṣọ ò gbọ́dọ̀ wá kìsà, ọmọ ẹlẹ́ran ò gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́gun.
Ọmọ Yorùbá ẹ jí gìrì.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká gba òmìnira tiwa.
Ọmọ Yorùbá ẹ jí gìrì.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká gba òmìnira tiwa. Òmìnira ni Yorùbá fẹ́ o nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Òmìnira ni Yorùbá fẹ́ o nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Ọmọ aláṣọ ò gbọ́dọ̀ wá kìsà, ọmọ ẹlẹ́ran ò gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́gun.
Ẹ̀yin àgbààgbà ilẹ̀ Oòduà.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká forí korí.
Gbogbo ọ̀dọ́ ilẹ̀ bàbá wa.
Ẹ jẹ́ ká fọwọ́ kọ̀wọ́.
Lọ́mọdé làgbà lóbìnrin lọ́kùnrin
Òmìnira la fẹ́.
Ọmọ Oòduà kí lẹ fẹ́ o.
Yorùbá nation ni o.
Kéku lè ké bí eku.
Ẹyẹ lè ké bí ẹyẹ.
A ò bẹ́nikẹ́ni lọ
Kádà dúró la fẹ́.
olúkálùkù dájọ́ orúkọ bàbá rẹ̀.
Lórí ilẹ̀ wa o.
Ẹ ò bá lẹ́gùn bàbá ní òjò bí ó sì jó mọ́ bàbá nìkan ò lè mú ní sí. Àló ti tó gẹ́ a ò ṣe mọ́. Ìrẹ́nijẹ èyí ti tó gẹ́, ìfìyàjẹni ti tó gẹ́, ikú ọmọdé ikú ọ̀dọ́ a ò fẹ́ mọ́ nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. A fẹ́ kí èdè wa ó di pàtàkì ìgúnlé. A ò fẹ́ ètò ìjọba tipátipá mọ́. Gbogbo ẹ̀yin ọ̀jẹ̀lú ọ̀bàlújẹ́ ènìyàn yìí ẹ kó ráńgà yín ẹ máa lọ. Ká lè fúnra wa ní ètò ààbò tó péye lórílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Ìyà tá a jẹ tó lọ́wọ́ àwọn ará òkè ọ̀hún, ìfipábánilò yìí a ò fẹ́ mọ́. Bíbani ní nǹkan oko jẹ́, dídá ẹ̀mí àwọn àgbẹ̀ légbodò ó ti sún wa. A kì í bá ní tán ká fani nítàn ìyá, ẹ jẹ́ a máa lọ ká lọ gbòmìnira tiwa.
Òmìnira ni Yorùbá fẹ́ o nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Òmìnira ni Yorùbá fẹ́ o nílẹ̀ bàbá wa. Ọmọ aláṣọ ò gbọ́dọ̀ wá kìsà, ọmọ ẹlẹ́ran ò gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́gun.
Òmìnira ni Yorùbá nation fẹ́ o. A ò
òmìnira náà yóò dé bá wa lágbára Ọlọ́run. Kò kú ní bá wa nu sàárè, kò ní bá wa lọ́gbà ẹ̀wọ̀n, kò ní bá wa níbi tá ò fẹ́, kò ní bá wa nílé ìwòsàn lágbára Ọlọ́run ọba. Ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò Yorùbá Nation Now. Mo kí ọkùnrin, bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo kí obìnrin, mo kí gbogbo ojú tó wò mí káàkiri gbogbo ayé. Ẹ wá nǹkan fìdílé tàbí kẹ́ fìdílé nǹkan kẹjá àjọjẹ gbádùn ètò tòní. Ó sì dá mi lójú pé ètò alárinrin ni. Ohun tẹ́yìn náà ó gbọ́ lénìí, ohun ìdùnnú ni, torí pé kò tí ẹ mọ̀, èmi ò mọ̀ pé yóò tètè yá báyìí. Mi ò mọ̀ pé yóò tètè yá báyìí. Ẹ jẹ́ á bẹ̀rẹ̀ báyìí. Ẹ̀yin tí ẹ ṣáà ń wò mí, ẹ máa bá mi buwọ́ lu ṣánẹ́ẹ̀lì yìí. Fẹ́yìn tẹ́ bá tí ì ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀, pàápàá jùlọ ẹ̀yin tẹ́ wà lórí YouTube, lórí Bàbá Gbàgede Mọ̀ TV lórí YouTube, ẹ ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ lénìí. Bẹ́ẹ̀ wá wo aago tó wà lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ tá à ń pè ní notification bell, ẹ bá wa tẹ̀. Ẹ bá ti tẹ̀, ẹ má gbàgbé all tí mo ní ká tẹ̀, ALL, ẹ bá ti tẹ̀ yẹn náà. Gbogbo ìgbà tá a bá ti ń ṣètò sórí ìkànnì yìí lẹ́ẹ̀máa rí wò ní kedere. Ẹ̀yin ti Facebook náà, ẹ̀yin náà ẹ má gbàgbé ẹ follow wa. Ẹ̀yin ti Instagram, ẹ̀yin náà ẹ follow wa. Ó yá ní pápápá ẹ jẹ́ á bẹ̀rẹ̀ ètò. Ohun mi ká sọ léyà délé pẹ́ lónìí. Oríṣiríṣi ló ń ṣẹlẹ̀ nílẹ̀ Yorùbá. Mo ti ẹ̀ gbọ́ pé níbì kan wọ́n láwọn Fúlàní ti débẹ̀, wọ́n níbì kan Buhari estate tàbí nǹkan kan. Ẹ̀yin tẹ́ bá wà níbi estate yìí, ó dà pé Èkó ni wọ́n sọ pé wà. Ẹ gbìyànjú kẹ́rí pé ẹ ṣe ètò ààbò tó péye fúnra yín ń bẹ̀. Ẹnìkan ló pè mí, pípè yẹn ò tí kò wá jágara, bọ̀ ohun tí mo rí graphs ń bẹ̀ ni pé wọ́n ní Buhari estate báwọn Fúlàní yẹn wà níbi ibẹ̀ ṣe ni mi mọ̀ ibi tí Buhari estate yẹn wà dáadáa ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn ò clear gbàtẹ́ nìyẹn pè mí ẹ jẹ́ jọ ẹ jẹ́ kí á tọ́jú ara wa àwa tá a bá mọ̀ pé à ń gbé bẹ̀ ẹ jẹ́ ká mójútó bẹ̀. Lónìí ni mo gbọ́ tí bàbá Gani Adams tí wọ́n fi léde pé àwọn fojú rí níbi táwọn tàbí wọ́n sọ ohun tó jọ wípé àwọn Fúlàní yìí pé hẹlikópítà ni wàá já oúnjẹ fún wọn. Àwa ò ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ rí a ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ mọ̀ torí pé àwa náà ti gbé fídíò orú ẹ̀ dáadáa at least ó ti tó mẹ́ta tèmi ti rí fídíò ẹ̀ níbi tí hẹlikópítà tó ti wá jóúnjẹ fáwọn Fúlàní. Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ni pé wọ́n lérí wọ́n lè kà pé gbogbo olú Yorùbá làwọn ti yíká ohun táwọn retí ni kí wọ́n kọ́ pa wọ́n láṣẹ wípé ó ti yá. Ẹ̀yin olóṣèlú ẹ̀yin olórí wa ṣé ẹ máa lajúlẹ̀ báyìí kí tàlùbọ̀ kó wọ̀ ọ́? Ṣé gbogbo ogbe tí mẹ̀kúnnù ti ẹ̀ ń ké ṣé kò ta yín létí ni? Ṣé ẹ̀yin ò ríro ni? Ẹ má jẹ́ kí wọ́n bàálù ìjẹ́ ẹ má jẹ́ kí wọ́n bàálù ìjẹ́ mọ́ wa lórí. Ọba tó jẹ tìlú fẹ̀ ṣé ẹ mọ̀ pé láíláí orúkọ ò ní parẹ́? Ètò sì jẹ tìlú túká orúkọ ò ní parẹ́ bákan náà. Orin kan ní ẹ ṣe èrè kó dára ẹ ṣe èrè kó dára o ẹ̀yin láyé kan ẹ ṣe èrè ẹ̀yin láyé kan nísìnyí ó ń yí ni ọ̀dọ̀ yín ló yí sí báyìí látòrí vice president lórí speaker house of reps ẹ̀yin ọmọ Yorùbá tẹ́ wà ní highest rank lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ nìyẹn lórí àwọn governors lórí ẹ̀yin senators lórí ẹ̀yin house of reps members lórí ẹ̀yin state governors ẹ̀yin house of assembly members tó fi kan commissioners ministers senators gbogbo yín pátádélẹ̀ tẹ́ ẹ jó lórí ilẹ̀ Yorùbá kò yọ yín lẹ̀ o ẹ̀yin láyé súnkàn báyìí ẹ ṣe eré kẹ́ ẹ lè rí tàn rí pa ẹ ṣe eré káyé lè pàtàn rí lé yín lórí. Àwọn tọ́jọ́ lùgbà nígbà ayé Tinubu Awólọ́wọ̀ gbónáwà àwọn Akíntọ́lá dà àwọn Awólọ́wọ̀ dà níbo ni gbogbo wọn wà àwọn Adégbèrò DS Adégbèrò gbà yẹn àwọn dà gbogbo tú tí wọ́n jọ pa àtàkíntọ́lá o àti DS Adégbèrò o àtàwólọ́wọ̀ tẹ́ bá gbọ́ Akíntọ́lá takú mo rò pé èèyàn tẹ́ wò mí ẹ mọ̀ tán yẹn kí DS Adégbèrò kó wá jẹ gọ́fúnà kó má jẹ gọ́fúnà takíntọ́lá yarí pé láìláì òun kò mbẹ tí ẹ ti ṣe lọ́jọ́ kan ṣo péré tó sì dijọ́ kejì takíntọ́lá takú at the end of the day kóòtù dá Akíntọ́lá láre Akíntọ́lá ń bá tó fẹ́ ṣe lọ gbogbo ẹ̀ kí ló wá gbẹ̀yìn ẹ̀ oníkálùkù wọn ti wà nù sàárè tí wọ́n ti ń jẹ́jọ́ nǹkan tí wọ́n gbáyé ṣe gbogbo bílíọ̀n tẹ́yìn náà kó sínú bílíọ̀n fan ẹ padà rojú ẹjọ́ kan ṣe báyé yìí wà lọ́yìn kì í ṣàwà lọ ṣẹ́rẹ́ ọkàn yẹn Ọlọ́run fi rí wa mú fi jù wá lọ gbogbo ẹ̀mí pátá náà ni ó padà tọ́kú wò gbogbo yín lẹ́ padà kó láyé èmi tí mo sọ̀rọ̀ yìí náà èmi náà padà kó láyé gbà tọ́lọ́mbá lásìkò tó kọ́lọ́jà ṣe tó pọ̀ ń bẹ̀ là ń ṣàdúrà bí gbogbo olùbá wa ń ké tí wọ́n pariwo tẹ́yìn kọ̀tẹ́ lẹ́gbọ̀ọ́ tó jẹ́ pé kò tẹ́ fẹ́ dé lójọ yín lójú tí ẹ ráyè tàwọn tó ẹ kó jẹ́ káàkiri tàwa mẹ̀kúnnù ẹ máa ṣe lọ Quran ti parí ọ̀rọ̀ ó ti nínú ọ̀rọ̀ bá kálábí mi resort Ọlọ́run ẹlẹ́dàá táwọn yẹn ó wà bẹ́ẹ̀ tí ń wo gbogbo wa ó ń wo ṣe sí wa ó ń wo tá à ń gbáyé ṣe yóò sì san wá lẹ́sànjọ́ kan. Àmọ́ mo gbà fẹ́yìn ọmọ Yorùbá náà dúró láwọn ọmọ Yorùbá àtàtà àwọn ọmọ ọkọ Yorùbá wọn ò fi tó lórí kan ṣe wọn ò fi tẹ́lẹ̀ mú ṣe o wọn ò fi tẹnikẹ́ni ṣe. Yorùbá àwọn tí wọ́n jẹ́ ọmọ Yorùbá àtàtà wọ́n ń gbégbèsè gidi lórí báwo ni Yorùbá ṣe fẹ́ bọ́ lóko ẹrú. Mò ń bọ̀ náà ẹja dókè lọ́hùn mò ń bọ̀.
ṣó ti gbọ́ pẹ́ ṣó ti jẹ́ sí ṣó ti gbọ́ pẹ́ ṣó ti jẹ́ sí Omega Cargo alright Omega Cargo Omega Cargo wọ́n kẹ́rù wọlé wọ́n kẹ́rù jáde Omega Cargo máa rè.
Omega Cargo tàbá pèrè àkọlé àfidà alẹ́ gàràgà níbi ká báyàn gbẹ́rù káàkiri gbogbo àgbáńlá ayé Omega Cargo ló tayọ gbangba o. Omega Cargo Global Logistics Limited Manchester ni wọ́n sọ̀kalẹ̀ sí bàbí kílẹ̀ fẹ́ kó kílẹ̀ fẹ́ gbé kílẹ̀ fẹ́ rù má darẹ̀ láàmú ẹ fi iṣẹ́ yẹn rán Omega Cargo láàrin ká jíjú kàlà ó ti rí bá a ti fẹ́ orí gan. Omega Cargo Global Logistics Limited látijọ́ tí wọ́n ti ń rù tí wọ́n ti ń gbé wọn ò ṣubú rí débi tí wọ́n máa dọ̀bálẹ̀ àwọn tó ti ń bá wọn dò wọ́n fọwọ́ sọ̀yà pé wọ́n wà reliable wọ́n competent wọ́n wà durable and affordable. Omega Cargo ẹrù mi sọnù sí lọ́rọ̀ tiwọn wọ́n gbẹ́rù láti UK lọ sí Nàìjíríà and other part of African countries tàbí láti Nàìjíríà wá sí United Kingdom pàápàá jùlọ Manchester Sheffield Bolton Newcastle àti gbogbo agbègbè tó yí Greater Manchester ká wọ́n tún gbẹ́rù láti Nàìjíríà lọ sí European country USA Canada àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Omega Cargo Global Logistics Limited UK address wọn rèé Apollo Self Storage 3-9 Hyde Road Manchester M12 6BQ Unit 392 telephone number wọn ni 073-661-51959 tàbí 074-044-06624 Lagos address wọn ni number 9 Ẹ̀yọ̀gbọ́ Street Apako Bafolukun Oṣòdì Lagos telephone number wọn ni 080-617-97329 Ìbàdàn address wọn ni Suite 36 Praise Plaza Shopping Complex New Ife Road beside Town Hospital Ìbàdàn telephone number wọn ni 070-461-21944 Omega Cargo Global Logistics Limited tó bá jẹ́ ti ká gbẹ́rù Omega ẹjọ́ adé orí òkè òjò tẹyẹkẹyẹ ẹgbà fún.
Omega Cargo alright Omega Cargo.
Ẹ káàbọ̀ padà. Mò ń sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan pé mo gbà fún àwọn Yorùbá àwọn náà dúró lásán. Mo fi fídíò kan wà lánàá ohun tó ní kálukú dẹ̀ mú lọ ṣọ́ọ̀ṣì àbí mọ́sálásí ilé ìjọsìn. Abíọ́lá sọ̀rọ̀ kan pé Awólọ́wọ̀ sọ̀rọ̀ kan pé fúnra wa tó bá yá fúnra wa lágbèjà ara wa torí pé àlò ìlàjúlẹ̀ kí tàlùbọ̀ kò wọ̀ àwa tọ́lọ́run ò tí ì ní kí wọ́n rí gbé ká tètè ya láhùn nísìnyí ká tètè fẹnu wa gbóhùn sókè síwájú kó tó di pé ó máa di wàhálà kí wọ́n tó di pọ́n máa wá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní dọ̀yà wa àfi káwa náà máa gbóhùn sókè kó tó di pọ́n máa wá gbé tí ò yẹ kán gbé láàrin wa bẹ́lẹ̀ bá pariwo tẹ́lẹ̀ pariwo títọ̀ ń pariwo táwọn olórí wa dẹ̀ bá wa dá sí táwọn náà tèkè ẹ wo tó ṣẹlẹ̀ ní Anambra lẹ́nìí àná ló ṣẹlẹ̀ gómìnà wọn pàṣẹ gbogbo tó ń jẹ́ kidnapping nílùú yòówù fẹ́ gbọ́ mọ́ ó dẹ̀ sọ fún joint task force àwọn ènìyàn sì parapọ̀ wọ́n bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní lọ rúùtù gbogbo bí táwọn agbénipa gbogbo bí tó wọ́n hide sí gbogbo ẹ̀ náà fìṣì wọn out ìtọ́ máa rí panu wọn wọ́n padànù tí wọ́n máa tó cash wọ́n rí wọn mú redacted bíi méjì ni wọ́n rí mú àwọn tó kù tó sá lọ wọn àtìmọ́ o àtojúbọ wọn àti gbogbo ẹ̀ ni wọ́n kó padà kúrò níbẹ̀ àwọn computer video àwọn kankan ní gbogbo wọn ṣe ń sá kiri nìyẹn gbogbo ẹ̀ làwọn agbófinró yẹn ni wọ́n dé yíká ìyẹn ló ń jẹ́jọba tó fẹ́ ṣèlú ìyẹn ló ń jọjọba tó mójútó security wọ́n ṣẹ́ẹ̀lì wọn ìgbà táwọn náà rí pagbára tó wáyé ojú agbára tàwọn lọ wọ́n méré wọ́n tó rí mú ní àárín wọn ṣé ká lajúlẹ̀ báyìí ni ká jẹ́ kí Fúlàní wa máa pa àwọn èèyàn wa mọ́lé pẹ̀lú ẹ̀ náà sì tó kọ olóṣèlú sì tó kàn wọ́n ìtókàn wọn ni pé báwo làwọn ṣe máa dépò 2023 ìmí àsọ fún wa pé ẹ má wọrí ẹ jẹ́ kó dépò 2023 náà ẹ rí i pé n tó máa kọ́ mú ṣe nìyẹn báwọn Fúlàní ẹ má irọ́ tó tóbi mo gbọ́ pé wọ́n ti máa ní condition tán jọ máa reach síwájú kan tó gbà kẹ́nìkan di gọ́fúnà báwo ló ṣe jẹ́ Arewa ló máa decide ta ló fẹ́ rúùlù wa ta ni ò rúùlù wa. Kí ló dé tó jẹ́ ni tárẹ̀wá bá ti fọwọ́ sí ní òwọlé? Ṣé bá a sọ pé ọmọ Nàìjíríà jọ ni wá? Ṣé bá a níjọ kan ò gbọ́dọ̀ ṣerú ìjọ kan la gbọ́? Kí ló wá dé tó jẹ́jọ kan ló ń ráṣẹ pa? Àfikọ́ lọ ṣàánú wa o. Lórí ẹni tí wọ́n gbé ní Ọ̀wọ̀, tí wọ́n gbé nílùú Ọ̀wọ̀, lórí àwọn tí wọ́n pa lọ́wọ́ jàre ní ṣọ́ọ̀ṣì Ọ̀wọ̀, jẹ́jẹ́ mọ̀ pé ọ̀rọ̀ yìí ó dé UK House of Commons táwa pè bí Senate tí wá bí. Wọ́n sì jókòó, wọ́n deliberate lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀gbọ́n, wọ́n sọ ọ̀rọ̀ tààrà lé lórí. Kódà wọ́n sọ débi wípé tó bá possible ẹ jẹ́ kí Yorùbá nation máa lọ. Wọ́n jẹ ọ̀rọ̀ Yorùbá nation lẹ́nu báyìí láàrin ara wọn tí wọ́n jọ ń ṣe debate lé lórí. Fídíò yẹn ni mo fẹ́ kájọ wò pé ẹ ṣàjẹ́ àrọ́jú. Ẹ gbọ́, ìgbà díẹ̀ báyìí ló kù. Àṣẹ orin yín káyé fẹ́lẹ́. A ní ìgbà díẹ̀ náà ló kù, àsìkò díẹ̀ náà ló kù, tí wọ́n fà á parí ọ̀fà, tẹ́rú wá dòmìnira. Àní ká ṣá máa ní sùúrù, ṣe ẹ ti gbọ́. A nídìí láti ní sùúrù ni. Sùúrù gbogbo ẹ̀ gbà. Pẹ̀lú sùúrù mo mọ̀ pé a sì òkúta jiná. Ṣáwọn Fúlàní ní agbára Ọlọ́run sì máa dohun gbàgbé ilẹ̀ wa. Tá a máa fi pàtó pé àsìkò kan wà táwọn Fúlàní tó gbìyànjú bíi ti ayé Àfọ̀njá tí wọ́n fẹ́ gbalẹ̀ bàbá wa lọ́wọ́ wa. Àfàsìkò yẹn pàtó nígbà táwa náà bá dòmìnira. Ẹ jẹ́ ká bá wọn dé United Kingdom, káwo House of Commons, káwo báwo ni wọ́n ṣe sọ̀rọ̀ Yorùbá nation sí, àti tó ṣẹlẹ̀ ní ìlú Ọ̀wọ̀, báwo ló ṣe bí wọ́n nu síkítì ni wọ́n sọ lórí pé kí Yorùbá kúkú dá dúró. Ṣùgbọ́n kí n tó lọ, ẹ jẹ́ ká gbọ́ ìpolówó látọ̀dọ̀ FOS. Láti bẹ̀ mi máa wá fi yín lẹ̀ pẹ̀lú fídíò yẹn. Ojú tẹ́ fi ń wò mí ò ní fún, etí tẹ́ sì fi gbọ́ mi ò ní di. Aláwìyé Adébáyọ̀ Samuel bàbá tíṣà l'Abẹ́òkúta. Ó yá o, ẹ jẹ́ àjọ fẹsẹ̀ kan dé United Kingdom. Plane wa ti fẹ́ fò, kájọ lọ gbọ́n tí wọ́n sọ ní House of Commons láyọ̀.
Èrò tó ń lọ sókè òkun ẹ̀yìn dà. Ságbàsúlà àti máa wálé iṣẹ́ tó kójú òṣùwọ̀n láti bá ní ṣètò ìwé ìrìnnà ní kókó. Ọpẹ́ o! Ṣíṣe ìwé ìrìnnà dìrọ̀rùn ká bá ní ṣètò ilégbèé fún ìgbádùn àkókò ìsinmi lẹ́nu iṣẹ́, ìrìn àjò afẹ́ fún àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́, lílọ sí Mẹ́kà òun Jerúsálẹ́mù, ó fẹ́ lọ kàwé lókè òkun, iṣẹ́ kíkọ́ lókè òkun àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Force Excellent Able Travels and Tours Limited wọ́n gba òǹtẹ̀ lọ́dọ̀ ìjọba pẹ̀lú àwọn àjọ elétò ìrìn àjò ojú òfurufú. Force Excellent Able Travels and Tours Limited àwọn gan lọ́ba láti bá wa dòwò pọ̀. Ẹ lè pe 09055052472. Ẹ sì lè tí àtẹ̀ránṣẹ́ sórí +639 174 163 562. Wọ́n wà ní nọ́mbà 45 Shokenway Òkè Ìjẹun Abẹ́òkúta ní ìpínlẹ̀ Ògùn. Ẹ lè kàn sí www.excellenttravels.com.ph. Force Excellent Able Travels and Tours Limited. Ìrìn àjò dìrọ̀.
Development Affairs, if she will make a statement on the killing of church worshippers in Ondo State, Nigeria yesterday, and on wider issues of violence against religious groups in Nigeria.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm horrified by the attack that took place against a church in Ondo State, southwest Nigeria yesterday. I've publicly expressed the UK government's condemnation of this heinous act and stressed the importance of those responsible being brought to justice in accordance with the law. The High Commission in Nigeria has also expressed our condolences to the Governor of Ondo State and offered our support. I know that the House will join me in sending our condolences to the families and communities of those killed. Rising conflict and insecurity across Nigeria is having a devastating impact on affected communities. I've raised this issue with the Nigerian authorities on several occasions, including in conversations with Nigeria's Vice President and Foreign Minister during my visit in February. And during that visit, I also met regional governors, religious leaders, and non-governmental organisations to discuss intercommunal violence and freedom of religion or belief. It's clear that religious identity can be a factor in instances of violence in Nigeria and that Christian communities have been victims. But the root causes are often complex and frequently also relate to competition over resources, historical grievances and criminality. So the UK government is committed to working with Nigeria to respond to insecurity. At our security and defence dialogue with Nigeria in February, we committed to work together to respond to the conflict. We're supporting local and national peace-building efforts in Nigeria, including through the Nigeria Governors Forum and National Peace Committee. We provide mentoring and capacity building to support Nigerian police force units to improve their anti-kidnap capacity, and are supporting efforts to address the drivers and enablers of serious and organised crime in Nigeria. At our security and defence dialogue, we both reiterated our shared understanding and commitment to protecting human rights for all. We are committed to defending freedom of religion or belief for all and promoting respect between different religious and non-religious communities. I discussed FORB with the Nigerian Foreign Minister just last month, and we look forward to hosting an international conference on FORB in July. We will continue to encourage the Nigerian government to take urgent action to implement long-term solutions that address the root causes of such violence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting this question following the tragic news of the latest killings in Nigeria. A targeted attack, not on warring militia as part of armed conflict, nor even targeting farmers or villagers over land. No, this was a brutal attack on a place of worship, Francis Xavier Catholic Church in Owo, and on worshippers gathering on Pentecost Sunday. A time of celebration turned into a time of carnage. And why? That is the really urgent question. The Governor of Ondo State, Governor Akarodolu, condemned the attack as vile and satanic. Reverend Augustine Ikwu, Secretary of the Catholic Church in Ondo, said, "We turn to God to console the families of those whose lives were lost." And I'm sure the whole House will join in these words of condemnation and consolation for the victims and their families, and I do thank the Minister for her words in this connection. But as this urgent question implies, this latest atrocity is far from an isolated incident where religious minorities, particularly Christians, are being targeted. Bandits, predominantly militant Fulani herdsmen, have killed 3,000 people in 2022 alone. Most of these horrendous attacks have in recent times been in the Middle Belt region and have adversely affected the practice of Christianity in the region. My honourable friend for Strangford led an APP delegation to Nigeria last week alongside my Deputy Special Envoy, David Burrows. They heard evidence from Benue, Enugu, Plateau, Southern Kaduna, Adamawa and Taraba states. People all saying the attackers of their communities are militant Fulani herdsmen whose targets, whose victims are profiled based on their religious identity. I have a number of questions for the Minister. Whilst the causes of violence and conflict in Nigeria are complex, will she agree, following this latest attack, not in the Middle Belt nor in the north, but in the to date relatively safe southwest, that this is a FORB issue, as the attacks are mainly on largely Christian communities? Will the Minister agree to meet me and the APP delegation to hear how local faith actors and NGOs need more support to bring faith communities together? What can the government do to support the Nigerian constitutional guarantee of freedom of religion and from discrimination? How is the government's partnership with Nigerian security forces and legal services supporting the apprehension of perpetrators and preventing increasing acts of impunity across Nigeria? And finally, Mr. Speaker, will the government support NGO calls for the establishment of special courts for speedy prosecution of perpetrators of violence in affected states to discourage impunity? And will it support NGOs in providing better research and monitoring of such grievous religious and human rights violations?
Order. Can I gently say, it's a very important issue, that's why I granted the UQ, but you can't double the amount of time that's available. We've got to stick to the rules of the House. Not my rules, but the MP's rules. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, can I first of all thank the Honourable Lady for asking this question and you, Mr. Speaker, for granting it, and thank her also for all that she does to speak for freedom of religion or belief across the world. This was, as I've said, a heinous act. We have condemned it. It has been very widely condemned by both Christian leaders and also Muslim leaders. Leaders in Nigeria of different faiths have been very vocal, including the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs under the leadership of President General and Sultan of Sokoto. I mention that because I think it's important to note that all religious leaders from all sides are coming together to condemn this attack. As I said in my opening statement, it is clear that religious identity can be a factor in some of these violent issues. The sad fact is that Nigeria is a country that is becoming increasingly violent. It is violent, and there is rising conflict and insecurity. That includes terrorism in the northeast and separately intercommunal conflicts and criminal banditry in the northwest middle belt, violence in the southeast and southwest. But Ondo State, as she says, was an area that had not experienced tragedies such as this. So our High Commissioner has spoken, for example, to the parish priest of the church that was attacked to express our support and solidarity. We are encouraging religious leaders to speak out against this attack and continue to target, and others that continue to target religious institutions. We're working really closely with religious leaders, but also liaising with the authorities in Ondo State to encourage a thorough investigation. So her thoughts about investigation, we're talking directly to the state about how best to help them and to support those coming together. So we are working with local faith actors and have done so since Sunday's attack. The one thing that I would point out is that the really sad fact is that we're also seeing targeting actions against Muslim communities as well as Christian communities. So, for example, in April, in Tabara State, gunmen attacked a mosque. So it is important to work with all sides when we are tackling this, and that is why the UK will continue to also work with the government of Nigeria on medium-term and long-term programmes to help address the causes of the instability, as well as working with the police, for example, on improving the work that they do. Thank you.
Shadow Minister Bambos Charalambos.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to begin by thanking the Speaker for granting this urgent question. My honourable friend, the member for West Ham, who would have been taking this UQ, is unable to be with us today because she has COVID. We wish her a speedy recovery. The massacre in Owa yesterday was utterly horrific. To target a church where so many were gathered to peacefully pray and celebrate Pentecost is truly appalling. Reports suggest that at least 50 people have been killed, including children. The shock and sorrow, the anger and despair felt by the families and the communities broken by this atrocity will be shared on both sides of the House. And our solidarity extends further to the many across Nigeria in shared mourning for the lives lost. To millions of Catholics around the world, and so many in British Nigerian communities who feel this is a personal blow, sadly, this is not an isolated incident. Religious and ethnic bloodshed, kidnappings, and banditry, vigilantism, and revenge attacks are all on the increase in Nigeria, and each attack deepens the condition for further violence. Insecurity has been increasing rapidly across much of West Africa, and we haven't seen an equally urgent response from the government. As the desert expands with climate heating, traditional livelihoods are destroyed, governments are weakened, mistrust grows along economic, ethnic and religious lines, and criminals and terrorists fill the void. Surely we must recognise that insecurity even poses a threat to the stability of Nigeria as a democracy, and supporting such an important regional and global partner must be a top priority. So how will the government adapt and build upon the UK-Nigeria Security and Defence Partnership to focus on the drivers of insecurity on the ground across Nigeria, And what will the government do to stop Nigeria and the wider region from sliding further into instability with all the further atrocities that will result?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you to the member for speaking, and can I just send my best wishes to the member for West Ham, honourable member, and I hope that she feels better soon. He asked a really important question about what are we doing to address the drivers of conflict, and there are different drivers in different parts of the country, and I've had the huge privilege to be able to visit the country and talk to a lot of different groups, and also meet my counterparts a number of times. But so, for example, in some parts of the country you get conflicts between herders and ranchers. So we have provided technical support to the Vice President's office to develop Nigeria's national livestock transformation plan, and this is to set out a long-term approach towards more sedentary forms of cattle rearing. That explicitly is to address some of the drivers of intercommunal violence. That plan is now being implemented in 8 different states of the Middle Belt region. So very specific targeted work that's now being implemented. We also support efforts to respond to the conflict in, for example, work that we do on regional stabilisation efforts and the regionally led fight against arms groups, including demobilising, de-radicalisation and integration of former group members. We provide humanitarian aid to the crisis in northeast Nigeria, where 8 million people need life-saving assistance. One of the issues that we have helped with is improving respect for humanitarian law within the defence services. So part of our defence training officer is improving understanding of international humanitarian law. When my visit to Nigeria, I was really pleased to hear that in the northeast region, the relationship between security actors and local community members seems to be improving, and this was told to me by a local community leader who directly related that improving of relationships to the work that we have been doing to help improve understanding of humanitarian rights by the security services. So many, many different actions that we are taking in a very, very complex situation. And incidentally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm going to have the huge honour of meeting the Archbishop of Canterbury tomorrow, and I will certainly be discussing this with him.
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will the Minister take a look at early day motion number 95, which has been tabled by the Honourable Gentleman for Strangford and others, about the horrific stoning to death and then burning of the body and indeed the buildings of the college of a young female Christian student who had the temerity to object to the way in which a WhatsApp group was being used for inappropriate, quote-unquote, religious purposes. Does she accept that this problem goes wider than marauding groups, and will she make every effort to ensure that the Nigerian authorities bring the perpetrators of that barbaric crime as well as this one to justice?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe the Honourable Member is talking about the awful murder of Deborah Samuel, which took place on the 13th of May. It was another barbaric and heinous act. I've expressed my public condemnation. We've urged the relevant authorities to ensure that perpetrators face justice in line with the law. I was also extremely sad and troubled to hear over the weekend that there was a stoning and burning to death of what I believe was a member of a Muslim community in Abuja. So again, it reflects the incredibly difficult situation that we have. And there is, of course, concern that as we move towards an election, violence may increase, which is why we are urging everybody to stay calm, and why it's so important that leaders come together to condemn this attack, but also urge for calm.
SNP spokesperson Brendan O'Hara.
Thank
Thank you, and may I begin by sending our deepest condolences to everyone affected by this appalling attack. This time last week I was in Nigeria with the Honourable Member for Strangford, and while it is truly shocking, I fear that this latest atrocity will come as no surprise to the religious leaders, the civic society activists and the victims that we met, all of whom told us how rampant corruption, a culture of impunity, the inability of the state to provide adequate security, escalating poverty are all driving this beautiful country to the edge of catastrophe. So could the Minister tell me what practical help has she offered? And in a country where we were told that everything is seen through the prism of religion, when did she last meet with the Special Envoy to specifically discuss the escalating religious-based violence in Nigeria? And rather than cutting aid by 50%, shouldn't the UK be investing to alleviate poverty and building those interfaith, inter-community trust relationships to prevent such radicalisation in the future?
So the Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right to condemn this attack, and can I thank him and indeed members of the APPG for the trip that they took to Nigeria last week. I know that they worked with the High Commissioner to meet lots of different community leaders, faith leaders from many different parts of the country, and that visit was truly appreciated by the people who met. There are a number of things I've already mentioned, some of the different programmes we do in Nigeria to try and improve stability and address some of the long-term concerns. We also do a lot of work in the region to try and prevent greater instability, so including across the Sahel and in Nigeria. That's, for example, why we've got peacekeeping troops in Mali with MINUSMA, why we support ECOWAS and their efforts, why we lead the international response on the Lake Chad Basin, and I've just mentioned that. He asked me what meetings I've had recently. I'm in a pretty regular contact with the foreign minister from Nigeria. In fact, I spoke to him when we were in Côte d'Ivoire, and I spoke to our High Commissioner just last week.
Sarah Owen. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Clergy have been kidnapped, women and girls raped, and ordinary worshippers murdered in their sanctuary. It's appalling that the regime of violence against Christians in Nigeria has been allowed to continue for so long. Open Doors report that even within government forces, Christians are vulnerable to persecution. And we've also seen that Muslims in Nigeria have been victims of targeted attacks. No one is spared. What reassurance can the Minister give those in the UK with loved ones in Nigeria that we will not just mourn this violence, but we will take proactive measures to protect the freedom and lives of religious minorities in Nigeria and worldwide?
As I've said, the UK is absolutely committed to not only working with the Nigerian government to try and improve stability and to tackle insecurity in what is a very challenging part of the world, but we also are leading some of the work internationally to promote the freedom of religious belief, religional belief. And this is why the work of the envoy, who actually I met in December formally, but I'm in pretty regular contact with, and indeed we exchanged messages as soon as we heard about this tragic incident, why her work is so important. But also so is the conference that we will be hosting, a global conference on this in July. That will be at ministerial level. This is to absolutely drive forward international efforts on freedom of religion belief. And we continue to work with the UN, G7, other multilateral fora. The really important issue here is that we stand together to condemn this, that we believe that it is very important that not only we here in the UK, but across Nigeria, across communities, call for individuals to be held to account under the law. Under the law, they must be held to account under the law. But also, that call for calm is so crucial.
John Cryer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What's happening in Nigeria has actually been going on for over a decade now, and more or less meets the UN's definition of genocide. Now, the Nigerian government may say they're taking action to prevent this, and increasingly we're seeing attacks on Muslims. For many years, Christians have been predominantly the targets. They may say they're taking action. There isn't much evidence to suggest that they're doing that with any great determination. What have the government told the minister? She says she has regular meetings with them, which I don't doubt. But what has the Nigerian government said? What measures are they taking to address this and to stop it?
So the government, this is an extremely challenging issue, as he quite correctly says, that has been going on for many years. Terrorist attacks in northeast Nigeria, incidents of intercommunal violence in many states. They've had devastating impacts on both Christians and Muslim communities. The government has worked with us in the Nigerian government in the security and defence dialogue that we launched earlier this year. This was the first dialogue that we've had. They asked us to, for example, improve mentoring and capacity building for police, to improve some of the work they do. We reiterated our shared understanding on commitment to protecting human rights for all. But there are so many different drivers for this. So this is, for example, why the work that we've done with the Vice President's office on other ways of rearing cattle to try and reduce some of the conflicts between the different communities is really important as well. And these are projects that we work on where we can with the government. But it is extremely important that we continue to urge all parties, including those who are hoping to stand in next year's election, to keep the calm and not incite violence.
Leila Moran.
Deputy Speaker, the shock of these unprovoked attacks is made all the more heartbreaking by the fact that it included children. So the Liberal Democrats add our voices of condemnation to that across this House. The Minister has very rightly identified that the causes of this are complex, but are to do with lack of resources and indeed insecurity. But I'm afraid, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the government's money is not where its mouth is. Not only has it cut the aid budget to Nigeria by half, but the forward projections are no good either. It went from 237 to 117, then it will go to 73 million, 55 million, then 40 million. How does that dwindling budget tally with what the Minister is saying about this country being serious about tackling the root causes of this terrorism?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it's really important to look at what we have done. Okay? I've mentioned a number of different projects and others are coming, but for example, our Links programme has facilitated investments worth over £14 million. That has created 20,000 full-time jobs. It's helping over 48,000 people increase their incomes since 2019. And as I said earlier, when I visited the region, I was very moved to hear how the relationships between the community members and members of forces had significantly improved in the Lake Chad Basin. It is a very difficult part of the world. It has got very, very high levels of conflict, one of the highest countries in the world for conflict. But there were some slithers of optimism that I think we should continue to try and develop.
Mike Kane.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I, like hundreds of millions across the planet, had the pleasure of celebrating Pentecost yesterday. And with no disrespect for the Minister, I still don't think the FCDO gets this. Government has to recognise anti-Christian nature of the attack on the birthday of the church yesterday, because there were attacks at the chapel of the Pentecost in Jerusalem as well yesterday. Does she agree that the religious dimension has to be addressed for progress to be made?
Madam Deputy Speaker, as a Christian, I know how important Pentecost is. It is a really important service, and to attack Christians at prayer is a hideous crime. It is also a hideous crime to attack anyone from any religion who is trying to worship and pray for peace. And that has ripped away the peace of that community, of those who lost their lives and of their families. At this point, it is not clear who was behind the attack or motivated it specifically. There could be up to 50 different victims. As I said in my opening remarks, it is clear that religious identity can be a factor of incidents of violence in Nigeria. We have seen attacks against churches. We have also seen attacks against mosques. And it's really important that we work with a country that is 50-50 in Muslims and Christians, that we work together across the face to call for peace, to call for calm, and to call out those who attack others, whether it's religious motivated or otherwise.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister highlighted the fact that we need to hold those to account in law. Sunday is a religious day for many Nigerians, and to know that so many women and children died at St. Francis Church for just worshipping is very sad, and I also send my condolences to those families. One of the key issues around this is the fact that support for regional, state and community policing in Nigeria, that instability is something that's been mentioned by many members across this House. The Minister may be aware that just a week ago, the head of the Methodist Church, Bishop Sam Kanu Uche, was kidnapped, abducted in Abia State. 2 weeks ago, 2 Catholic priests were also kidnapped. Again, people merely wanting to worship and express their religion are being attacked. What more is the Minister going to do in addressing this to help provide basic security for communities, including communities in my constituency of Vauxhall, who are worried about their family back at home in Nigeria?
There's a number of different questions there, and I understand how concerned some of her constituents may be about their family back in Nigeria. Firstly, when we met with the Nigerian government in the dialogue on security and defence in February, we agreed to cooperate to support Nigeria to tackle security challenges and to promote human rights, and that's a really important part of the policing here. We have offered to support Ondo State, liaising already with the governor there to encourage a thorough investigation. I know that my High Commissioner is also encouraging religious leaders to speak out against this attack, but to encourage them to come together in condemnation, but also to continue to call for calm, to give support to the victims, and to ensure that those who face justice, the justice is in line with the law. And those are key commitments that we are working to try and support from all community leaders. And on top of that, of course, the APP Chief of Freedom of Religion Belief visited the country just last week.
Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Honourable Lady for Congleton for bringing it forward, and to the Minister for her responses. I wish to also associate myself and convey my deepest sympathies to those who grieved today, and will continue to pray for all of those families. As the Minister knows, I travelled to Nigeria last week with members of this House in Naylor Place. There we met with many Christians who had been targeted in the very same way as those celebrating Pentecost at St Francis Church were targeted. Just last year, Minister, 4,650 Christians were killed for their faith in Nigeria, 13 per day. In our discussions with the Nigerian government and the state governors and the British High Commissioner, it is clear that the duty of any government is to protect its people first and foremost, to keep them safe from murder and to ensure that their right to worship their God in the way that they wish to do. So can I ask the Minister, what help can the UK government give to the Nigerian government and to the military to combat the terrorism in general, ever mindful that the military were involved in 30 operations out of the 36 states in Nigeria? It's a big job. We need to help them.
Well, first of all, can I thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for leading the delegation last week. It was an invaluable opportunity to meet with religious and political leaders and discuss freedom of religion or belief in Nigeria. I also believe that you raised the impact of conflict and insecurity on FORB, and this is an issue which Sunday's attack just so dreadfully highlighted. But thank you for continuing to fly that flag. In terms of support, we have a number of programmes running in the country. We're working with the military on training, for example, on human rights. I have heard that has been making a difference. It is a very, very complex situation, but we do stand ready to support where we can.
Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My thoughts are today with the families and friends of the worshippers brutally killed in St Francis Church in Owu yesterday on a sacred day for Christians around the world. Members of my constituency who are members of the Nigerian diaspora have been raising their grave concerns around escalating religious-based violence in Nigeria for a long time now. And I tabled a written question a year ago on this topic, and I looked at the answer today. The response then was the same as the response we've had from the Minister today, which is that the government is encouraging the Nigerian government to take urgent action. While we've had warm words from the Minister today, I'm afraid the response doesn't meet the scale of the urgency of this horrific loss of life and escalating violence that we are seeing in Nigeria. So I asked the Minister, what is her own measure of the success of the programmes that she's talked about today? How will she know what is the impact that she's looking at for those interventions? And what engagement is she having with members of the Nigerian diaspora here in the UK to help inform the government's approach and make sure that it really is having an impact to stop this terrible violence?
I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady because she is actually asking really important questions. This is a really, it's a really tragic situation. It is one of the most violent countries in the world, and the violence is coming from many, many, many different reasons and different reasons in different parts of the country. This is what I've heard when I visited myself, but also when I've spoken to different leaders on the ground, different community groups, different stakeholders. That one of the huge tragedies about Sunday's awful attack is that it was in a part of the country which historically has been and has not seen this type of attack. So it's even in a way even more shocking and more concerning that it's therefore potentially widening. We are concerned, and we continue to be concerned, about the increase in this violence, especially in a country which is so significant and has got so many brilliant things happening in it. But that is why we've worked with the government to see where we can support what they needs to be done. We'll work with community leaders. We take different actions in different parts of the country as well. We often work with different state governors on different projects to try and increase stability and increase prosperity. For example, investing in education, investing in entrepreneurship programs, etc. are all part of creating stability as well. On the issue of attacks against different religious groups, sometimes these attacks are can have a religious link, other times they don't. But that's why we work not only to support joint voices coming together from different religious communities, but also to tackle the causes of instability.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The massacre of at least 50 Christian church worshippers in Ondo State, Nigeria, and other recent violence against faith groups is utterly reprehensible, and my heartfelt condolences to the loved ones of victims. So what steps is the government taking to advise and support the capacity of regional, state and community policing across Nigeria, our close ally, to provide basic security for communities and to stop the rise in banditry, vigilantism and further religious extreme violence?
Mr. Speaker, the member's absolutely right about the concerns of rising violence, and it's precisely because we recognise the impact of rising insecurity in Nigeria that we hosted our first ever security and defence dialogue in February. It took place over a number of days and in great detail. We came out of that committing to work together to do more to respond to the security challenges and indeed to the rising insecurity. So, for example, one of the things that we have committed to support is the delivery of effective, accountable and responsive civilian policing. This was a request from the Nigerians. Could we do more there? And that is what we will be doing. One of the many actions that we will be doing to help.
Mari Rimmer.
And I pray homage to the Honourable Member from Congleton. My thoughts and prayers are with the souls departed, and I hope the families that they leave behind can get some comfort from their own faith. Nigeria is one of the top 5 receivers of British aid, receiving around £250 million a year. Yet the Nigerian government are consistently failing to protect the freedoms and rights of minorities. The situation is worsening. It is not improving. The British taxpayer wants their aid support to go to the countries that are protecting the rights of women, religious minorities and other groups. So what is the Minister doing to pressure the Nigerian government to doing all they can to protect Christians and other minorities?
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is absolutely right that we work with Nigeria. Nigeria is a country which we have very long and historic and deep ties with, and very close links, and very close diaspora links, as many of the members have also said. And that is why it is a very significant recipient of UK aid. But that's also why we work on so many different projects in different parts of the country to try and tackle the different issues that are being impacted here. I think we shouldn't underestimate, for example, the impact climate change is having on the country, which is another driver of the instability. And that is why in our international development strategy, we are not only continuing to fund work that we do on supporting women and girls, who are also the targets, but also focusing on work to help to adapt and mitigate climate change. And that's, again, some of the work that we will be doing in Nigeria.
Christine Matheson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've also spoken to Nigerians in my constituency, and the message from them is a familiar one. Like the Honourable Lady from Congleton said, they're concerned that this is not the first time. But they are also concerned, as honourable friends from Dulwich and West Norwood, Leighton and Wanstead and others, Vauxhall have said, that there does not seem to be a sense of urgency from the Nigerian government. It's not necessarily that they are condoning these attacks, but their foot is not hard on the accelerator pedal. Does the Minister have full confidence at the moment that the Nigerian presidency has an understanding of just how serious these attacks are viewed and is really ready to take firm action to prevent further repeats?
It is, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I said, I discussed the situation of insecurity and rising insecurity with both the Vice President and the Foreign Minister when I was in the country in February. We then have had this extensive dialogue between our two countries to look at how we can help. I know they are deeply concerned about the rising insecurity. They're deeply concerned actually about the rising security across the Sahel and how that could impact on Nigeria. They are in the beginning of a process of a presidential election. One of the main parties has now chosen its leading candidate, the other is yet to do so. There is a concern that as we go through an election period, sometimes you see increased instability, increased violence, and that is why, again, I say it is so important that we all call for calm. We urge our constituents, if they're from the diaspora, to call for calm, to call across the different religious divides, as I witnessed in my childhood in Northern Ireland, how important it is to work across the religious divides and call for calm, and call for those who did this heinous crime to be held to account, but held to account in accordance with the law.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to send my condolences to the family and the loved ones of those murdered at St Francis Church, Catholic Church in Owo, and to the long-established Nigerian community who worship at St Clair's Catholic Church in my Liverpool Riverside constituency. So can the Minister explain what steps are being taken to ensure that increased poverty and food insecurity doesn't become a driver for further violence and instability in Nigeria and the wider region?
The Honourable Member makes a really important point about the impact of rising cost of living on not only Nigeria, but across, not on the region, but actually across the continent of Africa. And Putin's horrific and illegal war in Ukraine has pushed up world food prices, and that is having a real impact on the world's poorest, including many in Africa. The main thing that the UK has done is worked as one of our positions as a lead shareholder in the World Bank to unlock $170 billion of funding, an unprecedented package of support to go to the poorest countries in the world to help them to cope with the rising cost of food and fuel prices. That funding, and a lot of that funding, is going out quite rapidly, and we are encouraging it to go to the poorest countries first. But this, by Putin, is impacting on the world's poorest, including in Nigeria and across the continent of Africa. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for answering the urgent question, and the clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
If you want to know what's going on in city, or you want to listen to the latest news and gist, no stress, oh, just tune to BGI TV. BGI TV, you are one in a million.